Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Barnes.
And I'm Mark Langley.
Hi Mark, today's podcast is all about how we work with horses as opposed to getting advice from you about something specific that we're having problems in our training with. So the first question today is from Melissa, and she says that after a really long spell of over 12 months, she wants to bring her horse back into work. What advice can you give her, or what process do you think she should follow to bring her horse back in?
I'll just go through a few things that I do, tick off a few things to make sure the horse is okay with. First thing, when they come back in, are they still okay with us? Or, say for instance, your horse went to a trainer and for some reason it had a spell and came back, but the training was a bit traumatic for it. It became fright and pressure that was obedient with the trainer. Then you've got to go in and find if your horse is kind of wary or suddenly a little different and unusually different to pressure and things like that. And if that was the case, then I can't really give you the answer. I'd have to go through a whole bunch of things to find out, how to get the horse to understand pressure in a better way. But if it's just a horse that you've been working, you kind of know it pretty well, and, you just want to get it back in and riding again, then just look at the things that you need the horse to be okay with when you get back in the saddle. You don't have to sort of think of everything and have some big program. You've got to think, what's it need? What am I going to be calling upon in education-wise to get this horse to be comfortable with? The first thing, which, if everyone comes to my clinic where they're starting a baby or they've got an older horse with brace, I always go to leading and find out where the holes are in leading. And sometimes you learn a lot about your horse through leading, and leading is not just how the horse follows the pressure on its pole and backs up off the nose. Leading is how a horse feels about pressure, and it's the steering, it's the whole bunch of things. So, and also what it is when you put pressure on the horse, does it start to search and follow a feel softly? How does it think into the left rein and the right rein? So I'd get the horse leading up softly, I get it to walk past, I get it to sort of follow a feel. Lots of U-turns, where the horse goes past you in a straight line, comes back, so it goes out to the end of the rope and then you pull it back and it turns and follows the feel back. Lots of sort of nice hindquarter yields where you pick up a bend in the horse, lift the rein up in the angle towards the wither, and the horse can just step over and be just comfortable if you put a hold on the horse and say back forward, and have the knot quite close, in the sense of, right here underneath its chin, does it feel trapped and does it wriggle to that trap, or does it sort of softly try and figure out where the path of least resistance or the sweet spot is, is it comfortable with those things? So they're the things I'd sort of look at, is it comfortable with, because when you get on, you want to know when you pick up the rein, the horse is not going, oh, gee, that's really scary and I don't like that, or I'm really braced. And also you might find soreness or a tooth that's sort of, so go over their mouth and everything, feel for any sharp teeth up the sides and see if you can even get a dentist in to have a look, if you're going to be putting a bit in their mouth. But the first few rides, I'd just put a halter or a side pull on or something like that if I've been doing a lot of leading, a few days of leading and stuff like that. The other thing I go over, before I go too far, if the horse is looking at you with the soft eye and coming up soft, once you've addressed that, even approaching your horse, if it's not right, when you approach your horse, it's nervous, maybe just get it to sort of soften and be okay and comfortable with you. Don't go into all this stuff if the horse is still kind of braced and a bit frightened, because you're in its space. So, you might want to work on it kind of looking at you with a soft eye as you approach it and work on that catching sort of stuff. But then I'd also look at, and this could only be quick. You might spend just half an hour over 1 or 2 days just doing this leading, and it might everything might fall back into place as horse is comfortable. Next thing I'd look at is the belly rope on the horse. Even if a horse was always used to be a bit bitey with a saddle or something like that, I'd get used to belly pressure like I was training a young horse. I'm not just chucking a saddle on it and girthing it up, because maybe once upon a time it was a bit of a cold-backed, sensitive bellied horse. It might have had a bit of bronch or buck when it got a fright to that pressure, and maybe while it was in work it sort of disappeared, but with 12 months off it might have just might just poke its head up again. So you want to limit the chances of it getting a fright with the girth. So I do girthing pressure. So I'm up with belly rope on, girth up a little, loosen it up a little, girth up a little, see how sensitive it is first. And then if your horse is a bit bracy and tight, then I'd start to do some little leading lessons where I'd actually pull the rope forward, up past its shoulder and see if it can figure it out, and just rock the rope a little till the horse moves forward. Some horses you can help a little bit with a little bit of head pressure just to help them take that first step. But you want to just get them mainly just kind of following that girth. So if they get tight, the alternative is to lead forward. So you're treating it as a leading lesson, lead forward with that girth. And once they're soft to lead forward with the girth, you just, start to tighten up again. So when you're standing still, you're just lifting in your hand a little bit and lift straight up for the non-movement. If the horse walks off, you just let it walk off. And then when it gets to a certain point, so you've just walked into pressure, and then that pressure will be pulling back to you. And then they'll start to feel that and go, oh, maybe I'll come back a bit. And that you can do over a few days just to get them to kind of be very comfortable with the girth. But if you don't see any hardness in the eye and you don't want to spend all that time leading with the girth, then if you're pretty comfortable, the horse is soft around the barrel and it's not kind of worried about it, you've got it moving around a bit and pull the girth up while it's moving and stuff like that. Well, you don't have to if there's no brace or anxiety or angriness or oversensitivity. You don't necessarily have to teach them to lead really well with the girth. You've just got to make sure they're safe to carry that saddle. And then, as I say, just like from there, saddle, come into the pressure. If I'm walking up, notice everything in the horse. If you're walking up the saddle, the horse just sort of gets a hard eye. Or maybe teach that horse to softly walk and you hold the saddle and then put the saddle on them as they walk into the saddle and, just reintroduce those things to them. But once you've worked on the feel and the leading, the steering is going to be working a lot better. Make sure that when they're bending and doing their tight turns, they're bending well in their tight turns and coming back around and they're backing up nicely, nice smooth back up. And then do it all from a mounting block, lead them around you at a mounting block. If they're suddenly, when you're up there on one eye or the other, they're nervous, then you just stand a bit longer, get them to come into that mounting block and make sure that you've seen them trot and even canter in the saddle. So if you can set it up, you can get a canter on a long line on them and get them to canter out. That's be really good. And then pretty well, if they're looking at you both sides, if they can carry something over their back on both eyes that worries them, even a flag that you're just swooshing around while they're walking around on one side or the other, and they're comfortable with that, you can hold the flag up in the air and it's sort of, put in different positions in their eyes and there's no frightening bits, then and they've seen you on both sides in the mounting block, then generally that you should be pretty good. But the things you want to look out for as a telltale sign of danger is that I was moving my horse around the mounting block and I just shifted a little bit and pulled the saddle on it, stopped frozen. I should be right to get on. Well, no. If it stopped frozen, I'd probably say no move, and I want to be able to do something, make the horse just a little anxious. And if it freezes when it gets anxious, I wouldn't get on it till I've taken the freeze out of it. I, as a rule of thumb, I try and avoid getting on horses that have a freeze response when they suddenly get a little nervous. So I create a movement. And when they can tell you the truth, as in horses always tell the truth, it's just that we've taught them over the years to withhold the truth. So it's not that then they're lying, they're withholding the truth by hiding into a learned state of helplessness sometimes, and that can be in the freeze or shutting down and stuff like that. If you see that and you can't read your horse, then you want to get it thinking again and doing something, and generally try and get some movement in it, see if you can get it moving and thinking until the horse is open and engaging with everything. And then, just get on and ride. And take it slowly first if you want. If you were worried about legs, where you want maybe put the flag or something around from the girth back where the legs are going to go, just bump it a little and see if the horse will move forward to that bumping feel, and that's not angry, it's not kicking on both sides. And then that to the legs it might be a bit more supple. Just work through that and get on and ride.
It's all about that brace.
It's all about that brace.
The next question is from Sue, and it's about repetition in training and how we're meant to know when we're meant to stop. So she's given an example. She's training with a horse to do some floating at home, and she thinks they're making progress, but then she'll get a refusal and an explosion from the horse. So she keeps trying because she doesn't want to end on the explosion. Another example is that she took her gelding to get his scar manipulation done. They had a series of exercises to repeat daily for a month. They got to about 2.5 weeks, and he just seemed shut down and dull in his mind, so she stopped and tried to do the exercises another way. She's also heard trainers say, for example, you can never do too many backups. But she says you can, can't you, if your horse is not engaging in his mind with the activity.
Yes, correct. So you're correct in what you're saying there at the end. I remember, one of the big programs of horsemanship that a lot of people will be aware of was, remember the Pirelli Natural Horsemanship, and I think because of Pat's name was Pat Pirelli, he used to have a series of P things, and one of the things that I heard him say was, we say practice makes perfect, but he had this thing that says perfect practice makes perfect, and that's really correct. But the problem is if it's our version of perfect, it may not be perfect. So what I'm saying in that, what I'm sort of relating to in that is, you can practice something over and over and over and dull a horse. Like you said at the end, if the horse is not active, it's not aware of its body, it's not free in its mind and feeling good, and it's not finding the sweet spot in there, then it will grind down into a race, and you can actually wear the horse out with transition in its mind. Whereas good transition softens a horse and makes it feel better. So you're bringing it out of a bog. So this is the hardest thing, is if someone goes and practices something 100 times, they'll bog a horse down, freeze it, shut it down, whatever, or they'll improve a horse. So you have to see and understand, and this is the part I can't sort of just hand through a podcast or even a video, is you have to see when a horse's eye is open and aware and its body is kind of in that searching, I want to find the answer frame of mind, and then you give it the answer, or it finds the answer in those moments, and there's a moment of sort of softness in there where the horse goes, I found that. Now, if they find that soft, sweet spot in that little thing that you're asking, then they felt good. So, and every transition we ask of a horse to do usually is a transition that is making the horse, as I said, feel better, but it's activating its mind, so it's not shutting it down. So technically, 100 backups should improve a horse, not degrade a horse, or 100, whatever you're asking. But unfortunately, a lot of repetition can destroy a horse. Not destroy completely, but, make it harder. Or make it feel worse. So at the end of the day, it's our assessment of the horse consistently that makes us aware of if the horse is improving or regressing. So how do I answer the question? It's I reward horses and give them a little break. So when I'm teaching people about getting a horse to follow a feel, and whether it be the feel of the legs or a feel of a rein or a feel of something, the horse feels good about finding the answer because it's constantly finding the path of least resistance, and then it finds that spot where the mind and the feet and everything's lined up, and it feels good. Now, if you can see and know where that spot is, and the horse acknowledges it, you acknowledge it, then that sweet spot might hold a little bit for a few moments for that horse to feel like that was good, and it starts to want to hunt that, because every other moment outside of that moment is not quite right. So repetition is just repeating it and improving it all the time, as in, maybe giving a longer step or something like that. But you stop with your horse for a second to say, oh, good, we'll stop here and just have a rest, eh? So just let the horse have some mental time out. So when I reward a horse, for me, or when I'm teaching people, the release of pressure is not the reward. The horse finding comfort within the question is the reward. But the extra reward on top, like the icing on the cake, is, well, let's stop and just have a little mental, rest. And that could be a reward, or it might scratch you for a bit or something, or do something else. Now, the horse is not hunting a scratch as a reward. It's not hunting that rest. It's just me saying, let's stop for a second so we don't cook the horse or something like that, instead of going repeat till we lose interest. But basically, the understanding of the awareness of the trainer and the detail that they're looking at will determine whether repetition is bad or good to the horse. And I'll repeat something over and over and over till I get it right. But so people have seen me at a clinic just holding the horse going backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. Or another example would be I would back the horse. It was a really dull horse, didn't have a lot of try in it at all. And I backed it for 2 lengths of the arena in long reins. And I think people were wondering, why is he hanging on to it so much? The horse is backing. When is he going to reward it? Well, I knew that particular horse could spend its whole life doing repetitive forwards to backwards and feel bad in a backup its whole life because it didn't know how to think backwards or engage with that backup. Until there was one moment in that backup, its mind and its feet got together and it actually started to think backwards and walk backwards, and that's the moment I released. But I could have did forwards and backwards lessons for years on that horse, and it would just end up shutting down more. So I had to commit to backup until the horse knew that a backup could feel good, because it wasn't committing its thoughts to it, and it had learned to block people out. So that's why horses go duller when we do lots of repetition, is because they actually haven't found it. They haven't thought about it, and they haven't engaged with it, and they haven't searched into that movement or whatever we're asking. But if a horse starts to try and get some interest, so this will be another little thing in the answer, is if the horse gets a little bit interested, then you go, thanks for being interested, and you leave them alone. Because if it's a horse that started to really dull out, you don't do repetition, because that's what's put them there. Bad repetitions put them there. So for some horses, the first question and the first repetition I do is, can you wake up? And they go, yeah. And you go, thanks. Let's do nothing now. Oh. And then I go, can you wake up? And they go, yeah. So that might be their first lesson of repetition. Can you wake up? And then they go, yes, I can. And they go, oh, that wasn't so hard. And then they all of a sudden become awake for their second repetition, which might be, can you take 1 step awake? Oh, that was easy. But if I was repeating, move backwards while you're asleep 3 steps and then come forwards, then I would just grind them into oblivion. So I'm sorry I can't give you a real clear answer on this, but I'm guessing that your answer is correct in the horse has to be aware and thinking about what it's doing. It has to be finding comfort in it, and then you can repeat it, but you're not repeating it over and over and over and over and over and over and over like that. Otherwise you will dull even a soft horse that's got try, because they say, what's the point? So you have to have breaks, some repetitions to find a really nice one, a bit of a break, do something else, come back and do it, so you don't get a interested horse bored. So yeah, you have to do that. You still can have repetition, but you don't over repeat to create a boredom in your horse. For the horses that have been previously shut down or blocked out, their first job is do something very simple very well, which like I said, could be just wake up, be present, thank you, and reward. And then you go to the next thing. But once they're present and they're searching, everything after that becomes easy, because they're actually trying to do it for themselves. And when they're doing it for themselves, then the repetition keeps them open and awake.
That was an amazing answer, Mark. That just incredible listening to you, honestly.
Oh, really? I was a bit lost in it. I started to go around in circles myself.
And I think part of what you're trying to say is that people constantly have to be aware of where their horse is at. It's not about just training, it's about having that consciousness of what your horse is thinking and feeling. And what I've seen you do over and over again, and I think part of your many talents is your ability to kind of spring up a new way of giving a horse inspiration to try something different, to always try different new things to keep their mind stimulated, which you mentioned in that answer as well. So we're going to move on to the next question from Kate from Belgium, who has another sort of question for you to get you thinking. She would like your really honest opinion with this one. She has lost a bit of trust in her horse. She's a little bit afraid of him now. She's got a trainer who can take a horse on, who says that he can resolve their problem 100%. But she doesn't really think there's a problem with the horse. She feels the problem is probably with her. And she feels her horse probably senses that she has trust issues and it's reflecting on their relationship. Her question is, do you think it's possible that a certain type of character in a human and a certain type of character in a horse are just not compatible? They don't match. She just doesn't want to invest a lot of herself in her horse if she doesn't feel secure with him. And she just would like to know if you've ever come across this before.
You're either cut out for Afghanistan or not, I suppose, in the sense. So, everyone is suited. Everyone, I meet so many people in your boat at clinics that sometimes may feel they might have bit off more than they can chew with a horse, and they get a little hard on themselves. And I say, don't get hard on yourself. It's something that. It's just something. It's life. It's the way it is. Not every person's going to be right. Horses choose other horses they want to be around. They choose horses they don't want to be around. Things like that. I think it's very good to recognise where you're at in your own strengths and weaknesses, and there's a horse that's kind of a softer horse. Probably hasn't got as much past trauma. See, I don't want you to be hard on yourself in whatever answer I'm going to give you, because your horse has past trauma that someone's put in it. Now, any strong, scary trainer could get that horse to be obedient again, but as soon as that horse sees a softness and a weakness in a person, now just remember, softness is not always weakness. Softness may be just a little lack of clarity for that moment, or the horse not being frightened of a person. So a horse that has, and I see your horse as having past trauma and past training problems, and I think someone else has put some of that in your horse. So he's becoming defensive on you as a human, not as you as a person personally, but he's just seeing that he's not scared of you, so he's starting to challenge you. Because you're a softer personality or whatever. So there will be plenty of horses out there that haven't had that past trauma. They're a softer horse and they just need somebody to help them. So I see a lot of thoroughbreds, they just want somebody to help them. Just help me, please, because they're too frightened to be angry, some of those horses, or they're too sensitive and they're just always constantly on search and seek and a little bit of flight mode. So they're really easy horses for someone with a soft personality that's to help, because they're not defensive and angry and looking at people like, you're challenging me, you're ruining my life. So those horses are very much more suited to someone who can just be strong enough to stand quietly and go, hey, I can help you, I can make you feel good, and then all you have to do is learn better techniques and rein management, rope management, how to manage your own sort of, ups and downs, so you're not bouncing around too much. And then those horses, aren't going to challenge you in that fearful sort of way that your horse is probably challenging you. So I think you would be more suited to a horse that's not strongly defensive against humans in general because of what someone's put in him. Because if the other trainer takes him on and doesn't get trust in humans in general, and just makes him sort of frightened and obedient, so he's going, no, I'm too scared to make a mistake, in time, that anger and fear and all that will come out and his defensive nature will still be there. Okay, so I see lots of shut down, obedient horses that open up because they're not frightened of their owners, but they shut down as soon as they get with someone who frightens them again. So I believe for you may already know half the answer, But I'd say there'd be a softer horse out there that's going to make you feel good, feel a lot more helpful, and you're going to do some really good work with. But for your defensive horse, be careful he doesn't go to someone who's just going to put him back in that state of scared obedience, which he's already been put in, that's made him sort of aggressive and defensive. So also be careful of your choice of whoever takes on the horse, because a strong person, obviously, as I say, might make him obedient, but it doesn't make him feel better. And so I think you've got to also acknowledge that as well. And also practice, like what I say to people is don't feel bad, because if I went out to learn something, I'm going to practice on a green slope, learn how to ski. I'm not going to practice on a black slope. And horses with that defensive nature that have had that put in them, it is a bit like learning on a black slope, where there's plenty of horses out there that, a bit more forgiving. You can make a few mistakes and it doesn't matter. And they just generally like being around people as well. And they're going to give you a lot of fulfillment, but yet you still get a lot of fulfillment because they're still going to have all their things that you can help. They've been let down by other people and stuff like that. So there's still a lot in it. But yeah, don't. If you feel he's pushed you to your edge, maybe a horse that's just a little different personality would be much better for you, I think.
Okay, your last question today, Mark, is from Hannah, and it's all about working with stallions. So she'd like to know about your experience with starting and developing young stallions. She's got a horse called Lord. He's going to be 4 in May. So he's generally friendly, trusts humans, and is used to basic handling. Trailer loading has never been a problem. She's had him for 3 years. They've moved recently to mountain pastures, from mountain pastures where he was with a herd of stallions, so lots of horse socialising. But the move helped him with his health. So he had a few problems, and he was due to selenium, which caused weakness in his front legs. And so she sort of had him in a different area where she could really help build up his strength. She's done lots of exercise with him, crossing bridges, building trust, lots of taking up hills and steps and all sorts of things, and building up curiosity and patience. He's smart, and it's been easy to communicate the boundaries with him. Now, though, he's going into puberty and it's changing. His hormones upheavals are a little bit confusing, she thinks, for both of them. There's no aggression in him, but all of a sudden a lot of energy, which she actually likes, but she'd love to know how to direct it properly. There's a little bit more of persistent boundary testing. So, no, I don't want to do this stubborn attitude. She's finding that clear repetition of basic rules will calm him, and she feels that working on tasks and building up his skills will help. But some people have told her that she's left the real work too late. And of course, when you look back on his history, his health was a reason that she couldn't do a lot with him before. She didn't want to hurry him. So she's looking for a gentler, sensible way to work so that they can both grow and enjoy it. And she's just wondering if you have any insights and guidance.
Firstly, I want to say this to everybody out there, is I used to start, all different horses, and I remember there was someone who used to start horses that had a different rate for different horses, stallions more, and like they were harder and stuff like that. And I didn't find that the case with stallions, they were just as soft. I think they're just big puppy dogs. But you have to also be careful of that high level of desire that they have at that sort of, time of year and around mares and stuff like that, and the high senses and stuff, and how you manage it. But in saying that, without that around, there was no difference to training a stallion than any other horse. It's not that they're different, and it saddens me that stallions get treated so differently, because, if you ever sort of, dreamed about what animal you come back as, you wouldn't want to come back in a human world as a stallion, because the chances of getting treated worse and being isolated and persecuted because of what you are would be a lot stronger. And that's what I mean, is stallions kept singular in small paddocks and boxes, pacing fences all day long, being taken out to mares, to all that. It's a torturous life. So just to sort of put a message out to everyone that has a stallion, they are horses and they're a living animal, and somehow we've got to sort of manage it so they can sort of have a fairly happy life and not just sort of put foals on the ground so we can have nice horses that we can breed. But anyway, it's their own. But yeah, so going into the training of him, I've heard people say you've got to rule with an iron fist with a stallion, and it's not that you've got to be hard on them. I see people being hard on them. There's stallion bridles with the chain on it, and really a stallion bridle, I guess, is someone trying to say, well, the boundary's clearer on that than another horse. And yes, you have to be clear with the boundaries, but you don't have to inflict pain on the horse for that. So if you can really sort of, the biggest thing you're going to focus on is him having self-management in certain situations. So the best stallions are the ones that have an alternative when that adrenaline might be up, especially, if they were sort of, mares around and stuff like that. And they have to know how to let go of a strong thought. Now, they can do it in the wild with each other, like one stallion can turn another stallion around and send him on his way, and otherwise there's outright conflict, and we don't want to be in a constant conflict with our stallion. But so he's at that stage now. You started to sound like you're clearing up boundaries, but keep boundaries very clear and constantly monitor how well he lets go of strong thoughts. Okay, so basically you want to start to manipulate him in a way that is, okay, he's starting to gaze off in the distance. How easy at this moment is it for him to let go of that thought? So that moment could be a mare that's just over there, or a horse trotting up and down a fence, and him is like, wow, what's that going on over there? Well, the level of that is nothing compared to when there's a mare in season right in front of him. So if he's going, wow, what's that over there? And you take a little feel on that rope and he can't let go of that thought, well, put yourself in a position where there's a mare right there and he won't let go of that thought. So you've got to sort of start to grade the level of the thoughts that he's seeing and work out, may not be important. Okay, the simple one might be a positive thought. People I say to someone, why did you let your horse go in the float? Oh, because that's good. I said, yeah, but the horse went in with a hard thought. You might see that as positive, but the horse couldn't let go of that push in the way it walked in. You think it's going to let go of the run out when it runs out, or the way that horse took that bit, or the way the horse took an apple out of your hand. You couldn't get that horse to let go of that thought in a positive thing. So when it wants to kick another horse, you think you're going to be able to let go of that. And so when the horse is doing something we want, and it might be a bit pushy or cute about the way it sort of comes up for a scratch or backs up to us for a scratch, we giggle a bit. But a positive thought is that a horse won't let go of is only a negative thought that they won't let go of. So you've got to manage even his positive interactions with you in a way that's clear and decisive, so he knows that he can let go of that and he can stop. So it could be just the way he walks up to sniff on you. If it's a hard, strong push, you just say, no, not like that, but we'll do it softly. So we can let go of that thought, because it has to be sort of clear to him all the way through. So a negative thought might be, oh, there's a mare, I want to run off. That might be negative to you. So you've got to say, let go of that thought. So if he looks across to a horse, let him look. But when you pick up on a feel, if he can't let go and come back just straight away when you ask, then you say, well, you need to let go of that, come back. So you let him look. You don't trap him. You don't say, don't look at anything like some people do with their stallions. You just say, you're allowed to have thoughts, but when I need you to come back, are you available? And you slowly test it. And until that, in a medium environment, he can look at a horse in the distance dropping up down the fence. You just have to step across, pick up a feed, and he says, right, gotcha, we can go over here now and let go of those thoughts. And once he's at that stage that he's kind of happily going and coming and going and coming with his thoughts, they're free either way. They go away and they come back. Nice and easy, nice and equal. The thought goes away and comes back equal. Once that's equal in a medium environment, then it's easier to test him in a more sort of emotional environment where there's bigger things like mares in season, more horses, all that sort of stuff. But you have to be constantly monitoring how easy he can let go of something to take on something new, and just any fixations, gate fixations, gazes, not thinking about from you to the gate, destinating. Constantly teach them to let go of those things and teach them to be constantly in the present, in the area where it is. And that becomes more of a habit. As I say, if you're not micromanaging him and you're allowing him to think about things, think his way through things, then he'll stay a happy horse. As I say, you just need to know that he can take on a new thought by letting go of an old one easily. And then he's more set up for the big environment when it gets harder, when you're riding him out and stuff like that. But that has to become a bit of a habit for you and him, especially for the stronger minded, easily distracted horses. Doesn't matter what horse it is. The ones that get anxious very easily because they're constantly distracted, or the fixators. The reason they stay like that is because they don't know how to regulate that, because we've never said, well, this is going to make you feel better anyway. So they just bounce around all the time, not knowing which is, what's what and where the sweet spot is. So with most horses, that's the conversation you're constantly having. It's just that with the certain horses, you have to be a bit more diligent with it and a lot clearer with it.
And letting them socialise. Yes.
Yeah, that's so important. What I was saying before about stallions, they're kind of persecuted because of their stallions. The less they socialise and the less they're having that happy interaction with horses, the more extreme it seems when they see horses and the more exciting it may seem. It's the same philosophy as, my horse has separation anxiety, so I'm going to put it in a paddock on its own to get it used to being on its own. So then when I ride with other horses, it won't be attached to anyone. Well, they end up with the opposite, is because the horse is so alone. When it sees other horses, it's kind of like a huge experience for it. So it can get either super anxious, super defensive, angry at other horses. It can hook onto any horse that was near for that night, more than a horse that's been in a herd, because those horses in a herd are in a stable mental environment all the time for longer. So a person in a stressful job takes the stress home. So a horse that's stressed in the paddock is going to be stressed in the new environment because they're carrying stress all the way through. So with stallions, it's important that they're happy, and when they're babies, if they do get to engage with other horses as they're growing, and like being around tough mares, like a wild stallion does not do what a humanized stallion does to mares, as in they don't want to get hurt, so they read body language of other, especially mares. When it comes to breeding, they actually can be very soft gentlemen because they've grown up knowing what danger is, I suppose, and instead of just not knowing dangers and just only seeing mares every now and again, and it makes them a lot happier for longer. So I think in managing stallions, you've got to think of all those things to really help them out. But it's just clarity, and they still give them a life that they feel good in. So if they go good in a little mob of geldings without mares, obviously not every environment's the same, but it's important that they have company. And our stallion comes over the hill, and this is when they're all paddock together in a big paddock. He'd come over the hill once every so often and go around all the geldings and have a little play, and then he'd go off on his merry way to stand under a tree with the mares. And the geldings knew that they just couldn't get close to his mob, too close to his mob, but they'd sometimes follow the mob and follow that other mob all the way around the property. But he never made it. He never went out of his way when things were organised to harm any other horse.
Very good. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you to all the questions that have come through from the members.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jenny.
You can learn more from Mark online through his online training videos. Just search Mark Langley Horsemanship. There's over 380 training videos which everyone has access to with a 7-day free trial. If you like what you see, it's just $15 a month from there. That's help where you need it.